I hope you enjoy this video of the Gemini Bridges Road just northwest of Moab, Utah. And if you like it, maybe give it a thumbs up. A little bit about my wife and myself. We're just a couple of retired 70-year-old kids from East Tennessee and pretty new to off-roading. We got inspired by seeing some incredible YouTube channels of off-roading with some fantastic scenery and landscapes, especially some trails around Moab, Utah. Gemini Bridges was one of those trails, which is the topic of this video. And by the way, we really like those off-road videos that take their family dogs and cats with them. So I'll have to apologize ahead of time that we don't have a dog or a cat to take with us. Now, we did the trail in September 2025, and although we own our own Jeep Willys, Moab is about 1,700 miles from East Tennessee, which is a bit of a long trip. So instead, we flew into Salt Lake City and rented a Jeep from a company called Epic Jeeps. And those folks were fantastic, very friendly. They brought the Jeep to the airport, and the Jeep itself just performed like a champ. So we recommend them highly. Here's a map from the Utah Bureau of Land Management that shows the Gemini Bridges Trail as well as another nice trail in the area, Long Canyon. It's a point-to-point trail about 13 miles long. Now, we started at the trailhead just off of Highway 191, just north of Moab, Utah. Now, you could start from the other direction, which is off Highway 313, that goes into Islands of the Sky section of Canyonlands National Park. We are just past the trailhead off of Highway 191, northwest of Moab, Utah. The trail starts out at about 4,600 feet at this point. The high point about 6,000 feet. I've seen the trail rated between 2 and 4, depending on who's doing the rating. It's fairly easy, but there are a couple, 1 to 1.5 foot rock steps that you have to get over. Not difficult for a Jeep or a well-equipped four-wheel drive with some clearance. Now, this part of the trail that goes up a bit of a shelf road up to a broad valley is arguably the roughest part of the trail. It's lots of small rocks. Going is fairly slow, probably beneficial to pare it down. And now we start climbing. The road ascends about 400 feet, then drops back down to a reasonably broad valley. Now, parts of this section are a shelf road with a pretty severe steep drop-off on the left, but most of it is much more gradual drop-off, if you even want to call it a drop-off. There are a couple of places where the road gets pretty narrow, but for the most part, there's lots of places to pass. Let me give a preview of some coming attractions in this video. When we do get to the Gemini Bridges, I just want to say a couple words about some very sad tragedies that occurred there, and also talk a little bit about the rangeland, the open rangeland that is on the plateau, as well as say some words about the Slickrock that is up there. We are gaining enough elevation to get some very expansive, beautiful views. We love this kind of beauty. It's stark, a bit barren, not much vegetation, but beautiful nonetheless. Off in the distance are the La Salle Mountains, which do reach an elevation high enough to have honest-to-goodness forests and some snow in winter. I will throw in a technical note here that the Action Cam does a pretty good job of picking up the colors, especially if I saturate it a little bit more. But in comparison, here's a still photograph. Highway 191 in the valley that goes down into Moab. The road does start descending, and after a couple of turns ahead does enter a broad valley. So the Gemini Bridges Road does go through this broad valley for several miles before ascending to the plateau. On both sides you can see these cliffs that are probably 100 or 200 feet tall. And along the way you'll see an interesting rock formation called the Gemini Rock. And unfortunately, here you can see some tire tracks just beyond the sign that says no vehicles. We finally come to a fork in the road. The road on the left is the Gold Bar Rim Road, and we'll go to the right, which continues the Gemini Bridges Road. You can see that we start going up some Slickrock, and ultimately we'll go up about 200 feet to the top of the plateau. And this Slickrock, it's all this, well, all the geology in the area is sandstone. Now you would think that sandstone would be crumbly and soft, but it is not. I'm not an expert in geology, but those sand grains are pretty well cemented together with either silica or quartz or calcite or iron oxides. Obviously there's a lot of iron oxide in the area that gives that red color, but it's kind of neat to drive over this thick rock. It is fun to run across these cattle guards, and there are a couple along the road. This land is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. It's mostly open range land. We have seen cattle in the area. I've often wondered, well, how do the ranchers find their cattle since they are dispersed over a huge area? And I'm not a rancher. I don't know much about cattle. All I know is what I can find online, and apparently there are several ways that ranchers can do this. The cattle do tend to stick to certain areas, forage and water areas. Water like springs, stock ponds, troughs, creeks. So generally if you find the water, you'll find the cattle. And there's also salt blocks, mineral locations. Ranchers can use GPS tags on some of the cattle. They use dogs and of course can ride horses in this backcountry. So a variety of ways that the cattle can be found. This might be a good place to say that there are a fair number of roads in this area. Gemini Bridges Road itself was built back in the 1950s and 60s for uranium and mineral exploration. But not much of that going on these days. The road is used primarily for recreation, off-roading, mountain biking. May have noticed on this Slickrock surface that in places there are lots of multiple shallow grooves parallel to the road, and sometimes even looks like curbs on the side, particularly in this section coming up. It looks like it's been ground down with some mechanical equipment, but apparently, as far as I can find out, that's not the case. That it's all just natural processes. Thousands of vehicles running over the surface, sand that gets blown onto the slick rock, with the tires just acts like a sandpaper to wear the surface down, and then rainwater and freeze-thaw cycle somehow causes those grooves to deepen. So that's as much as I can find out. If anybody knows something more, I'd love to hear it. Another fun little section. You can take your choice of going to the left or to the right. The left is much easier, just a little bit of shallow rock climbing. The right side, though, you can see is a little bit more challenging. Even a little bit of a moat there at the bottom. A lot of rubber has been left on the rocks. But yeah, as I said, we chose the easier path. Now, this bit of rock climbing gave us a little bit more pause as newbies. You can see these steps are probably about a foot to foot and a half tall. So we got out to inspect and carefully evaluate our line. Didn't turn out to be nearly as bad as we feared it would be. So not a problem. One just has to have a little bit of faith and confidence in one's equipment. And at last, the feature attraction, the Gemini Bridges themselves. These are two side-by-side natural sandstone arches that span the end of a side canyon off of Bull Canyon. What makes the Gemini Bridges somewhat unusual is that you're looking at them from above, although you can take a road down to below and hike back to them. I looked up online and found out that they are formed of Jurassic age sandstone. Top layer, or the cap rock, is Kayenta sandstone, and that's a little more resistant to erosion than the Wingate sandstone underneath it. So over time, water and freeze-thaw cycles eroded the softer underlying Wingate layer, leaving the harder Kayenta layer behind as these natural bridges. We did happen to make a new friend, Cooper, who is the dog of another off-roader that we happened to meet there at the bridges. Here is a view of the top of the bridges, and you can see the gap between them. That gap is about 6 to 10 foot wide. You can legally walk across them, but that said, several people have unfortunately tried to jump that gap but didn't quite make it. And it is a 200-foot drop to the bottom, so you only get one chance to get that right. Also, very tragically, in 1999, a 19-year-old rode his sheep off one of the bridges and unfortunately died. There's a memorial for him there. And because of that, you're no longer allowed to drive vehicles across the bridges. And with that sad history, I'll wrap up this video with a few photos of the area. Hope you have enjoyed it, and if so, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.